And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Deborah Kobylt Live with my guest, Leah. Guy, thank you so much for being here, Leah.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk to you about, namely your latest book, your third book, Overcoming Toxic Emotions. And it's a great read. I have thumbed through it, read through it, went back to a couple chapters that I footnoted. It's a terrific book for anyone looking to heal their own toxic emotions, but also identify what also people with their own toxic emotions that might be impinging on our lives a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about you. Why did you write this book? What was your journey to writing this?
Well, my first two books were really about explaining, how we get stuck in certain patterns and the symptoms that show up emotionally and physically and so forth. And this book is, it's not really an addition to that information, but it was I felt like a lot of people were looking for a specific way to move out of the experience that they're having right now. So the idea of the book is to give a very practical three-step method, but also explaining as simply as possible why we do what we do and how we experience that feeling of I'm stuck. I keep having the same relationships. I've felt this, for 40 years. I don't know what to do with myself. So there's kind of a pretty simple explanation to all that, understanding that, and then understanding how that makes us feel and then what we're attracting in our life. It's really important.
Let's go back to you a little bit because you have not always had it easy. You look all adorable there. You've written three books. You look like you've got it all going, but it wasn't always like that, right? Take me back to a darker time in your life, please. And there were quite a few.
Yes. Well, I talk pretty openly about several different things. One that I think a lot of people can relate to is an anxiety disorder that I would say I had, yes, through several years of my late teens into my 20s, even a little bit into the early 30s. An eating disorder. I had an aunt who was murdered when I was 11, the same year as my parents got divorced. I experienced a rape. So there was a lot, and at a certain point, I couldn't manage the overwhelming confusion and depression and anxiety and the need to self-sabotage. So I sought help for myself. And that's what really sent me on the journey of helping other people. I didn't really set out to write books or anything like that, but I love to help people, and not only just help people, but to inspire people that life can truly transform, and it's not just something we say. It can really happen, and you can have a fulfilling, successful, happy existence.
I was mentioning your book to a friend of mine, and she's living in a relationship that makes her very sad all the time. And it's easy for somebody to say, just get out of it. But she's a little intertwined in her relationship with him, and she's stuck, and she doesn't have any idea how to do that because, he'll say, well, you won't see your kids or this or that. What do you say to somebody like that who's scared and really stuck?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of people, a lot of us have been in that situation, or we are in it right now. And
Right.
it's a fine line because we have to look at how the relationship is serving us, because everything serves us one way or another. So it's
Mm,
either serving the higher parts of ourselves and that growth and expansion and showing us different parts about peace and contentment and fulfillment and so forth, or it's serving to remind us that there's unresolved wounds within ourselves that are
mm.
still present, that need to be worked on. If we look at it as a reflection or as a mirror, and the fine line is, we don't want to stay in something that's toxic or that's miserable or totally unhealthy, but yet a lot of us are just projecting onto the other person and saying, they do this, they make me
Mm.
unhappy, they talk to me like this and so forth. I think the idea that if we can change that narrative to what's going on within me, how am I feeding into this, what are my needs that were never met that I'm expecting to get here that aren't, am I being codependent, am I scared on my own, do I feel unsafe, or do I not trust myself, and all these things we project onto other people, and it keeps us in a discord, with others, but certainly there's a discord going on within us. So I think the first step is always looking at self and going, what can I do in this moment to feel more centered, more grounded, to love myself, to give myself what I need, to satisfy my own happiness, to make sure I'm, living the life that I want. And then we bring that to a relationship to share it. It's not anybody else's job to make us happy. So
Yeah.
that's where a lot of us go wrong, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I have to tell you, because you can't fix what's going wrong in the relationship without fixing yourself. And then after you do, if it's still not working, then what? Then what do you do? Where do you get the courage?
Yeah. And
Where does someone go ahead?
some of those relationships, although we don't want them to be our lifelong partnerships, as I said, how is it serving us? They are teaching us a lot about ourselves, if we're
Mm-hmm.
willing to put the light on us instead of fixate and focus on the other person. And that's what this book, Overcoming Toxic Emotions,
Yeah.
for some people it can be a little off-putting because we don't want to acknowledge and claim, the parts of us that are weak or that still need work or so forth. But it's really the whole intro is about releasing blame and stop pointing the finger anywhere, because this is all inner work, right?
Yeah, but don't you think everybody needs it at work? If only we could sort
Yeah.
of get and start this, I don't know, before kindergarten,
Yeah.
talk about no, I'm real serious, right? You're
I
learning
know.
math and how to read, and it should be something where we get to look on the inside so we don't have to carry this through and then we're adults and go, uh-oh, now what do I do? You got to go all the way back and figure out what's gone
It's
wrong. You
crazy.
talk, right? You talk
Yeah.
about the triple A, right? Acknowledge, accept, act.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, you did get into it a bit just before, but I
Yeah.
like that you kept it simple. What are the triple A's? And okay, so if you could
Yeah,
talk
so
about that.
they're very simple words and everyone knows them, but
Yeah.
truthfully, acting on those or like, embracing them into our daily life is really, really hard. So the idea is that whatever the trigger is, whatever the discomfort is, wherever we're struggling inside or those repetitive patterns, that we're able to become conscious enough in our higher self, in our what I call our adult self, that we become conscious in the moment right now so that we can apply this principle, because a lot of people are reacting from an old place, whether that's their inner child or their younger self or old stories. So we learn to become conscious right now. And then in that consciousness, we can acknowledge, what, this is upsetting to me, or this is frightening me, or this is triggering me. And even though I don't like it, I accept this feeling. And that's a huge part of our healing progression, is like not just saying I accept it, or I accept you, or I accept myself, but being able to sit with that discomfort and that uncomfortable feeling with full acceptance. It's like making space for it. And in that
Mm.
acceptance, we open our heart, we open our energy field, we stop compressing our body and our emotions and our energy, and we allow freedom and space. And then in that freedom and space, because we're centered already, then we can do something. And that's something, the act part, it doesn't have to be change our whole lives. It doesn't have to be change your whole routine. It doesn't have to be leave your relationship. It might just be right now, instead of firing off at the mouth, instead of throwing a tantrum, instead of, storming out, maybe I'm just going to take 3 breaths or jot down my feelings and honor that younger part of me that is really struggling right now. It can be simple things, but we have to do something, or else, it's very easy just to get on this loop, that loop that we all know of. This is the expectation of, this is how this is going to feel. This is how I'm going to react. This is how they're going to react. And this is how it's going to end. And then we do it all again tomorrow. So we have to stop that loop and be disruptors for our own lives.
What is inner child? A lot of people talk about that. I know what it is. I remember the first time somebody talked to me about it, I was like, what?
Yeah.
But then I really got to understand it. Could you explain to
Yeah.
the audience what is that?
Sure. So all of us have an inner child. It's essentially the part of us that, when we're doing inner child work, I like to think of it as the part of us that has experienced a difficult core wound, for example, and had what we might call like arrested development, a part of us that kind of shirked away or hid ourselves or learned to defend or manipulate or so forth, that kind of stunted the access to a full range of emotions and experience. And the inner child is also the part of us that is, reminds us of our spirit and our character. So each of us have an inner child. And I like to think of that inner child as being within us, like our inner self or younger self. And so when we're looking at our patterns and we're getting triggered, for example, and and maybe we're having flashbacks, or we, having a scary experience. That inner child will try to dominate our behavior in order to keep him or her safe. Because the inner child does, its number one priority is to stay safe and to not be in pain anymore, right? And so the inner child will do whatever it needs to do to try to get your attention and dominate the reaction or the behavior and defend itself. And again, as conscious adult people with intentional living and mindfulness, hopefully perhaps a spiritual inclination, it's our job now to be our own parent. We don't need the parenting of our parents as adults. We become the parent to our own inner child, creating a relationship that hopefully can instill a new sense of trust, a new sense of foundation, security. And the most important piece, I believe, is to learn how to validate that inner part of us. Because the reason the child shut down or still feels scared or afraid or little or unworthy is they never felt validated and heard in their experience. And, we can talk about then traumas and different things that happen. A lot of people don't think they were traumatized, but trauma is essentially any experience that was overwhelming and we weren't able to process it at the time. And again, that inner child, a child doesn't know how to process, various emotions and experiences. So it just becomes overwhelmed, shuts down, and has no one and no way to share their feelings. And that is the work that we can do now to free up that part of ourselves.
That's very important. And I think the reason why it's a cycle that continues to repeat itself is because oftentimes we become adults, right? And we never really dealt with our own inner child, and we had traumas and we pass that along. We don't quite know what we're doing, right? And then that kid ends up with inner child issues. It's a cycle. That's why I go back to what I say. Is there any way to get this kind of program into schools and early childhood education? I know that sounds like a whole revolutionary thing, but why not? Right?
I know. Well, I have
What do
to
you
say,
think?
I mean, I'm really happy to see the attention that mental health is getting, but I'm
Yeah.
such an advocate for emotional health that I think it's even more important than mental health, because emotional health is one of the driving factors for our mental health. And so you're right. I would love to have my book in every school out in the world. And just as one tool, there should be so many resources for children to learn how to deal with their emotions, how to process, how to feel safe, and get that validation and feel seen. It would change their entire reality, their paradigm of, what's true.
What worked best for you when you decided to go and seek help? And where were you in your life at your lowest point?
Oh, I wanted to kill myself. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. The pain and the whole experience was overwhelming, so it I had tried conventional therapies and antidepressants and all the things that people suggest, and sometimes those are really helpful, and honestly probably the antidepressant got me over or through a particular period of my life, but I would not say it was the healing agent in my life. So yeah, I was, drinking and partying and, I don't know how I want to say this, but I was just I wasn't behaving in a way that would make any mother proud. How about that? And I was, severely anxious and wanted out. And so, what helped me the most is when I discovered and found and kind of reconnected with my own sense of spirituality. And a friend of mine introduced me to this school in California. It's no longer there, unfortunately. It was a school about energy medicine and meditation and mind body experience and so forth. And in that, I went to learn, but ultimately I went to heal, and in that
Right.
space, I was able to allow people to access the subtle parts of me and help me, and help recenter me, balance me, validate, hear me, and I've done a ton of things since then, a ton. I've done
Did,
yeah.
go ahead. Like what? What did you do?
Well, I mean, and this is what's frustrating for a lot of people, especially if they don't have resources, is like breath work, acupuncture, hypnotherapy, Alexander technique, rolfing, of course, massage, nutrition, just the whole gamut, everything that you can think of, really, and all of it combined was a huge and instrumental part of my progress. But I'd like to see, people be able to engage with a few of those things that really make a difference for them.
Yeah. Do you work with people? You do work with people, right? On Zoom. I mean, tell me, especially like since COVID, a lot of people are getting their therapy this way. I actually think it's kind of beneficial and very intimate in a way to not have to sit in an office or sit somewhere, but instead you really get to be one-on-one connected in your own home, right?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
do a lot of work like that with people? And what do you think, especially since COVID? What are a lot of the issues that people are dealing with? Is it the anxiety, and how do we get from under it?
Yes, I do see clients and I see them sometimes still in person near New York City and on
Yeah,
Zoom. I too think Zoom can be beneficial, especially for a person who has, discomfort in the vulnerability and sharing. It's kind of a safe space. So it can work
yeah,
really well. I think, through COVID, what I've seen that a lot of people aren't talking about is many people are experiencing this angst, the angst
mm,
of feeling like they've had all this time and they haven't really accomplished anything. They didn't clean out all the drawers in their house. They didn't, finish the hobby that they started. They didn't start their small business side hustle, and there's this angst of I'm not doing enough. And I think the one of the lessons in COVID, well, not in COVID itself, but in the shutdown that was difficult for many people is just the removal of all the distractions. And here we are. Who are we when we're not doing? Who are we when our schedules aren't full? Who are we when we don't have the ego connection to, oh, I'm, going to LA and I'm doing this premiere and I'm doing this? Who are we without those events and identifiers? And that can be really challenging for some people.
yeah. I have to tell you myself. I'm suddenly invited to all sorts of things, and even today they said, "Oh, you're going to this event tonight." And I thought, "Oh gosh,"
Yeah.
because I sort of enjoyed sort of being in my own space, and I'm really carefully picking and choosing what I want to attend, not because I should attend it, but I want to attend. And that hasn't been so easy for me, just getting back out there,
Yeah.
because I sort of enjoyed being in my own little space. That's been something for me that I really enjoyed. What do you want to make sure that people get out of your book? Again, this is your third book, and each book led to this one. I like that it's a practical guide to building relationships with yourself and with other people. As you said, you got to build here first. But what do
Yeah.
you want to make sure people get out?
Well, in all of my work, I try to make room and space, acknowledgement for people wherever they are. There's no
Mm,
shame in where we are. And so anyone seeking, anyone attempting, anyone showing up for themselves, we really need to find a way to have a healthy pride about that and connect to our own worth. So that's
mm,
always number one, because I don't care who you are. I don't care what anyone looks like. I don't care anything about them. Everyone struggles, and everyone suffers in different ways. So the more that we can bring light to these matters, the more I think, we'll all be better off. And
mm.
ultimately, inspiration. I think there's a million self help books out there. There's a zillion people claiming to be gurus and having all the quotes. And oh my God, aren't we overwhelmed on social media with everyone and
Yep.
everybody telling you what you should do and what you should think and how you should be? And I think this book, and my style just kind of cuts through all the BS. And it's
Hmm.
just like let's do this. If we're gonna do this, let's do this. And here's an easy way how. So I hope to inspire people that they can really make some headway into their own growth, without feeling like they're not doing it correctly or they don't know how to do it or you know all those things. So that's what I hope for the book.
Yeah, I like that you said you don't want to sort of simplify it. And plus you've been through it. I mean, look how far down you went and look how you got yourself back up. So That's an inspiration to me. And I like that it is simple, but it's got fantastic advice in there too. How do people get in touch with you? On the website, social media?
Yeah, my website is my name, leahguy.com, or social media, leahguy.com, or Leah Guy Live. Sorry. Either
Leah
way.
Guy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And also, you've got a show that people can watch too, right? Or listen
Yeah,
to.
the Modern Stage podcast. Thank you for bringing that up. The Modern Stage
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah. And also, yeah, you do all kinds of work. The Modern Sage podcast. And you also own the Modern Sage production line and A Girl Named Guy Productions, right? And
Yes.
that's where you funnel all of your production work through, correct?
Yeah, I used to do a lot more before COVID. Not
Yeah.
so much production anymore, but I still, I'm constantly producing. I'm just not producing so much for other people at the moment. And the Modern Stage product line, it's a beautiful line of spiritual personal care products like aura sprays and chakra oils and crystals and that kind of
All
thing
right.
that people can find on the website. And I used to have a healing center near Manhattan and Jersey City. And, it's those items are close to my heart, but I don't promote them, and I also don't promote my one-on-one sessions, but it's all available on my website. So if someone's in
Okay.
need, it is there.
It is there. They can reach out to you. Leah Guy, Overcoming Toxic Emotions. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed talking to you. And there's a lot that we can all learn from you by picking up this book and listening to your podcast. So thank you very much for joining us on Deborah Kobylt Live. And you can find our show on YouTube and Facebook and on Instagram. And then, of course, we converted over to an audio podcast on just about any platform you could think of. Just look us up, Deborah Kobylt Live. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Leah. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bye.